Iowa's an energy state. And let me also say unequivocally that all of us, I think, bipartisan agree that we want a cleaner, healthier planet for our children and our grandchildren. But we also want to be able to have an economy that can compete in a global economic environment. Energy demand that I learned at COP26 and COP27, to my surprise, I thought energy demand was increasing. I was surprised to hear at COP26 and 27 that they thought energy demand is increasing. What I've yet seen from this administration is a way to transition with reducing emissions. So let me tell you a little bit about Iowa. Iowa has 50% of its energy from renewables. So that is wind, solar, biodiesel, ethanol, biomass, biochar, manure. We have this entire slew, and up until 2 years ago, we also had nuclear. We have an entire slew. 58% of our electricity is generated by wind. And we were told this year that we would potentially have rolling blackouts. Why? Because we're an energy exporter. So why should a state that generates massive amounts of renewable energy be subject to rolling blackouts? And it's because there's not enough energy production. On average, it takes 6.5 years to prevent transmission projects in this country. There are some examples of projects taking over 10 years, and they're still not fully transmitted or permitted. If we're serious about improving our grid security, modernizing our grid infrastructure, and diversifying our energy mix, we need permitting reform. Last Congress, I introduced the Stay Off My Line Act, which seeks to address some of these permitting challenges. And just very briefly, if you can, because I've got a couple of questions, what other steps can we take to improve our nation's permitting process when it comes to transmission? So if you would, Mr. Dabbar, if you could take a swipe at that.
Excuse me, your microphone, please.
The time clock of approvals under NEPA is basically preventing things from getting built. I think that's the biggest thing that could get fixed.
Thank you very much.
I would add that in Senator Manchin's permitting legislation, the language that dealt with transmission, I think, is a good place for this committee to look about going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Murko, and you had mentioned that earlier as well. Iowa is also the nation's largest fuel ethanol producer, and it accounts for about 1/4 of U.S. fuel ethanol production capacity. I've heard a lot from this administration and from people about electrifying our transportation sector. So I want to bring up a little different source of energy than what we've talked about throughout this 4 hours. I'm very supportive of ethanol-based aviation fuels or sustainable aviation fuels. According to the Department of Energy, replacing existing jet fuels with sustainable aviation fuels has been recognized as an effective strategy to help the aviation industry reduce greenhouse gas emissions, diversify fuel supply, and enhance energy security. The technology needed for SAF production already exists, including ethanol to jet conversion technologies. Compared to petroleum jet fuel, sustainable aviation fuel produced from today's corn ethanol offers a 15% lower carbon intensity, and as we've heard, can even be carbon negative. This is in part because the technology to produce ethanol from corn is improved. In fact, life cycle emissions of corn ethanol have decreased by roughly 1/4 in the past 15 years. What sort of R&D incentives and coordinated efforts would be needed to speed up the deployment of SAF in commercial aviation? Mr. McNally?
I hate to, I learned a long time ago working for President Bush, you either know the answer to the question or you say, I don't know and I could find out. So I'm going to pass to any other of my colleagues who might have views on SAF. It's not something in research and development.
I mean, we funded quite a bit of this at DOE, and as you mentioned, it's a big area of focus. The conversion of wind energy into sustainable aviation fuel through a series of chemistry steps is completely doable. You can turn wind into aviation fuel. And so it takes a few steps of energy, and some efficiency needs to be improved. But Iowa's in an excellent position to help drive that innovation.
Thank you very much, and I would agree with our, Ames Laboratory, with what we're doing in the renewable space, and then also continued innovation in nuclear fusion, as we've just seen some landmark things occur, and then in hydrogen as well. I think we have a bright future if we focus on where we have agreement and that we all want a cleaner, healthier planet.